Thank you for the invitation to be part of this important annual conference, and congratulations to the Superintendents Association for your adaptability in holding it in this way. This has been a challenging period for the country. As the Home Secretary has said, it's been an extraordinary year for policing. The UK law enforcement community has done what it does at times of crisis, responded with determination and diligence to protect the public. We should all be very proud. Whilst we have all had to adapt our home and working lives, it should not surprise us that enterprising criminals involved in serious and organised crime have adapted too, whether that be by committing offences against the vulnerable, including by committing child abuse in the home or online, preying on people's fears by selling fake COVID kits or targeting consumers through online fraud, or those who've used PPE shipments as a cover for drug smuggling. Through this period, policing activity against serious and organised criminals has been impressive. Essex Police arrested a man found to be in possession of a paedophile manual after the National Crime Agency had disseminated intelligence. He was later jailed and put on the sex offenders register for 10 years. The City of London Police detained a man who later pleaded guilty to making fake coronavirus treatment kits and sending them across the world. Police Scotland arrested 100 online child sexual abuse offenders between January and June 2020, with 180 children safeguarded in the same period. And Northumbria Police arrested 367 of the force's most wanted fugitives, fraudsters and domestic abusers amongst them. That was between mid-April and early June. At the National Crime Agency, we have coordinated and delivered significant operational activity, including Operation Venetic, the most eye-watering exposure of the impact of encrypted communications in facilitating organised crime. That work continues, and I can report today that across the UK there have been more than 1,000 arrests now, 87 firearms recovered, 2.2 tonnes of Class A drugs, around £57.5 million in cash, and more than 320 EncroChat devices seized. But more on Venetic later. This pattern of criminals adjusting on how they operate is one we are used to, and I am here today to set out how the nature of serious and organised crime is evolving, and how our response must too. I want to talk about how we increase the pressure on the criminals who dominate and intimidate communities through the supply of firearms and drugs, on those who undermine the UK's economic resilience, and on those who exploit the vulnerable through crimes like people smuggling and child sexual abuse. Back in April, we published our 2020 National Strategic Assessment of Serious and Organised Crime. Now, as we were at the height of the corona pandemic at the time, we didn't launch it with the same fanfare that we would normally. But I do hope that some of you have had the time to read it and digest it. That document concluded that there are now nearly 5,000 known organised crime groups operating within the UK, a quarter of whom we know to be involved in violent criminal activity. We estimate there are around 350,000 people involved in serious and organised crime. It described evolutions in not just scale, but also in complexity. There is an increase in criminal use of technology to facilitate organised crime, and 100% of National Crime Agency investigations now encounter some form of encryption. Overall, the social and economic cost of serious and organised crime to the UK is estimated to be in the region of £37 billion annually. Serious organised criminals are more pervasive and operate in more diverse ways than ever. I want to focus briefly on two areas from the assessment that I think are particularly relevant for many of you. Serious and organised crime brings gun violence to our communities. The NSA this year reported that police-recorded firearms incidents have increased by 38% since 2014. Additional statistics show there were almost 10,000 crimes involving firearms in the year to March 2019, and 33 people died as a result of gun crime. These weapons primarily come from overseas, often originating in Eastern Europe, before being transported to Belgium or the Netherlands and on to criminals here in the UK. They are a very clear example of a threat that creates fear and violence in our towns and in our cities and in our communities. And that requires a response from the very local to the international. Serious and organised crime also means people dying as a result of the illegal drugs trade. In 2018 alone, there were almost 3,000 deaths from illicit drug use, with 2/3 of murder suspects either known drug users or drug suppliers. The supply of Class A drugs drives serious violence, whether as a result of the 3,000 or so county lines identified in 2019 or competition between traffickers. Heroin and cocaine, of course, originate thousands of miles away, passing through multiple transit countries before arriving in every city, every town and every village in the UK. Like illegal firearms, Class A drugs are a global threat that fuel fear and violence here at home. And unfortunately, UK demand for both illegal firearms and drugs isn't slowing. We assess that the cocaine market alone nationally is worth over £25.7 million daily, while criminals increasingly want clean guns from abroad that they think will be harder for us in law enforcement to trace. Leading the UK system that fights these crimes is the National Crime Agency's core mission. We do this by mounting our own national and international investigations into the highest harm criminals, and through coordinating and supporting you, partners in police forces and ROCUs. And our response has had an impact. We are enhancing the intelligence picture on illegal firearms and Class A drugs, and the substantial links between these trades. As you will be aware, firearms use is heavily linked to drug supply, and they are often transported using the same routes and the same methodologies. Operationally, NCA activity led to the seizure of more than 250 firearms in the UK in 2019-20, and all of your forces have taken many others out of circulation too. In the last year alone, NCA activity in the UK and around the world has led to the seizure of 129 tonnes of cocaine and more than 2.5 tonnes of heroin. You will recall that I mentioned some key results from Venetic earlier, and of course some of you have and still are working on it. It is without doubt the biggest and most significant operation of its kind in the UK, a massive breakthrough in the fight against serious and organised crime. We have really enjoyed the quotes captured in the criminal communications, phrases like "police are winning this year" and "NCA are the worst, bro." Who'd have thought I'd have ever used that phrase, should make us all smile. This international operation focused on the encrypted global communication service EncroChat. Through working with partners, we were able to access messages shared on the platform earlier this year. The insight we got was simply remarkable. As my Director of Investigations, Nikki Holland, put it, it was like having an insider in some of the UK's most serious crime networks. As a result, we have seen new or complex connections between networks internationally, reinforcing the truly global nature of serious and organised crime. And we, with you, need to challenge ourselves about whether we have accurately mapped and assessed the groups involved. And we know more about how the crime groups are operating too, how they move money and how they keep track of the commodities they supply. The NCA's niche technical and specialist data exploitation capabilities are identifying and locating offenders through the analysis of millions of messages and hundreds of thousands of images. This success in dismantling the crime groups that cause such misery to our communities and communicating the scale and impact of the activity to the general public is underpinned by strong system leadership and interagency collaboration. That helped us make the most of all of our capabilities. It shows how when we are able to adopt a whole system approach to serious and organised crime with the right leadership and the right resources in the right places at the right times, it is possible to achieve unparalleled operational success to protect our communities. It shows what can be done where the sharing of data and intelligence is quick and easy, and where capability development is integrated across the policing and national security community. And it demonstrates our determination to take the fight to the criminals. Together with partners, including policing, we took away what was previously a safe criminal space. We prevented murders, kidnaps, serious violence. We took lethal firearms out of circulation, and we disrupted drug traffickers who dominate and intimidate communities. Our response isn't just about successful operations, though. We are taking significant steps to shape the National Crime Agency for the future. There are 3 key projects which demonstrate this in action. The first of these is the National Data Exploitation Capability, or NDEC, which has significantly reduced the time taken to ingest, process and exploit bulk data, applying advanced analytical tools to the everyday things investigators and intelligence staff do. Put very simply, it allows us to join the dots and gives us the ability to make new links with certainty. This advanced capability has already been successfully brought to bear against the tens of thousands of child abuse industry referrals generated every year. It allows us to rapidly identify hundreds of victims and potential perpetrators and better support other frontline partners in our combined efforts in tackling this dreadful threat. We are also joining up to pool resources and knowledge at the National Economic Crime Centre, which is working across law enforcement, regulators, government departments and the private sector to help us understand and counter the threat from economic crime. This worked well during the response to COVID-19, where the NEC played a crucial part in preventing tens of millions of pounds of NHS procurement fraud. And we also now have the National Assessment Centre, which pulls in intelligence from across the spectrum of national and international partners and makes assessments accordingly. This allows us to both articulate a single picture of the threat and, importantly, prioritise the operational response. Despite all this hugely significant progress, it is my view the overall system charged with tackling serious and organised crime remains flawed. I have already described what Venetic has taught us, but I could point to our lack of coherence in the response to victims of fraud, which now makes up around 1/3 of all crime. Or the fact that the country's investigative team cyber is funded through a separate and short-term stream. Indeed, SOC funding is fragmented and arrangements are often short-term, with duplication in the development of new capabilities draining money from the overall pot. The system is confused and lacks the necessary capacity and capability to keep up with the speed of change and growth in threat. This does not always enable a coherent, effective UK response like it should. And meanwhile, the SOC threat is more pervasive than ever. It is evolving and it is diversifying. So now, we need to go much further. Quite simply, we want to make the UK the safest place in the world to live, to work and to do business. And we have 3 key ambitions. The first is to tackle financial exploitation to bolster UK economic resilience. This means taking more action against the highest harm criminals and online fraudsters in the UK, making sure that crime doesn't pay by seizing assets from them. We want to target corrupt global elites who abuse the financial system, ensuring the UK is the safest place to invest and its institutions more resilient to hostile states and cybercrime. The second is tackling drugs, guns and people smugglers. We want to deliver for the first time a truly end-to-end approach to these criminals. We'll do this by increasing our presence in source and transit countries from which people are trafficked, firearms supplied and illicit drugs produced, taking action at the very earliest opportunity. And we also want to increase our proactive investigative capacity at the border and within the UK to dismantle criminal networks, cut off supply and seize cash. The third key ambition is to combat criminal use of technology. We've seen the importance of knowing what the highest harm criminals say to each other, so we want to go further in undermining secure criminal communications by enhancing existing capabilities, building new ones, and using them to deny safe spaces to criminals. Achieving these ambitions will be tough, but there is plenty going on that can help to make that happen. The independent SOC review, led by Sir Craig Mackey, has produced recommendations covering the status, roles and responsibilities of the NCA, police and other agencies in England and Wales to ensure that we have the right governance, support and legal powers. And through the government's integrated review, which will re-examine strategic aims for the UK's national security and foreign policy and look at the capabilities needed to secure those aims, we are looking to work alongside our UK intelligence community partners to exploit new science, data and technology. We need to transform a fragmented environment of data sets and users into a connected network of people with the right skills and organisations with the right infrastructure. We've seen a prototype of how this might work with the NEC, the National Economic Crime Centre, and the success it had in preventing COVID-related fraud I mentioned earlier. Collectively, we need access to the capabilities that the most technically proficient criminals and hostile state actors have. To enable us to step up and meet our objectives, though, I am under no illusion that we need to strengthen the National Crime Agency. We must look at stabilising our funding arrangements. We want to be able to, as a SOC system, plan further ahead and target our investments in the right places. This will allow us to stay on the front foot operationally and mount even more proactive investigations. It will allow us to transform digitally to ensure we have innovative, digitally capable workforce with the skills to tackle the future threat. And it will allow us to invest in critical data collection, exploitation and disruptive capabilities in the UK and overseas so we can continue to dismantle infrastructure globally and confront hostile state actors. This would have benefits not just in the fight against SOC but on other national security risks too. The way the system is set up now makes what we want to achieve far, far more difficult. I'll be frank with you. In my view, this change is not optional, it is essential. And it isn't about any kind of land grab by the NCA. It's about adjusting to the new normal and ensuring we have the right capabilities in the right places so that we, as a whole law enforcement family, can all do our jobs better going forward together and to protect the public we serve. I want to end today by emphasising that delivering our mission to lead the UK's fight to cut serious and organised crime would be simply impossible without many partners, including you, our policing friends and colleagues. I've set out for you today the key changes I think need to be made in the wider SOC system, but that system also depends on a properly coordinated policing response, especially challenging in these challenging times. This is highlighted through the tragic events of last year, when 39 Vietnamese migrants were found dead in the back of a lorry in Essex. The investigation into those deaths, Operation Venetic, has been brilliantly led by colleagues at Essex Police, who are determined to get justice for the families of those who died. They have been supported by the National Crime Agency and, like much of our work, it is right that the light isn't shone on it. We see this relationship too in some of the most important work we all do, protecting children from sexual exploitation by pursuing offenders and bringing them to justice. Day in and day out, NCA officers are working closely with all of you, our UK policing colleagues, to share intelligence, often from international partners, and to safeguard children. We can recognise it's sometimes a challenge to work to agreed national priorities when there are intense local pressures, particularly where the national level threat isn't so starkly visible in communities. We are working closely with PCCs on this. They are important partners in achieving our mission at a local, regional and national level. We share with them a common aim to deliver effective law enforcement and keep people safe from all crime. The most vulnerable, though, have the weakest voices, and our job is to ensure they are protected. Our ambition is to lead and coordinate the whole law enforcement response to serious and organised crime so that our capabilities are brought to bear against the highest harm criminals. But the reality is that can only be done hand in hand with policing at local and regional levels. And I want you and the communities you serve to see tangible benefits of these system reforms. To end where I started, we all know that law enforcement in this country is simply world class. But these are challenging times and we cannot be complacent. Our adversaries aren't. A better response to serious and organised crime is one that tackles the threat from every angle. And in order to do so, the whole system, the NCA, policing, intelligence community and government needs to deliver. We currently stand at a crucial point in framing how our response to serious and organised crime will look in the future. We must not miss this opportunity to deliver lasting change to protect our communities. Thank you. I look forward to taking your questions.